All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. It is Brian Hines from Pat's Pulpit, back as always with Alex Barth from 98.5, the Sports Hub, for a pretty busy show. A lot to talk about today. We have a football game this week, Week 17, Patriots at Bills. We are nearing the end, so we will break that one down. We have Rodney Harrison, a finalist for the Hall of Fame, and then we have the college football playoffs coming up, so we will talk about all of that. But we want to start a little differently today with some interesting comments made in the college football landscape with Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, who was coached by now Patriots offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien at Alabama last season. And he made some comments today basically saying Bill O'Brien wanted him to switch positions and basically kind of said he sucked at quarterback and wanted him to move off, and he ultimately didn't. And now he's leading Alabama to the college football playoffs as a quarterback. So the connection immediately there was to Malik Cunningham and how that whole situation unfolded this year with Bill O'Brien. So just some interesting comments there, kind of from Jalen Milroe about Billy O there.
Yeah, he does not seem like a guy who likes Bill O'Brien. He was asked, and at first, because the first quote I saw was not a quote, just, Jalen Milroe says Bill O'Brien told him he should switch positions, which I'm like, all right, like, I'll give Bill O'Brien the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was, we've got Bryce Young, this Heisman winner, like, you're not going to play. Can you maybe go somewhere else and you'll get on the field sooner? And then Milroe was asked how he felt when he was told he shouldn't play quarterback, and he says to the reporter, "How would you feel if I told you I suck?"
Yeah.
Or sorry, how would you feel if I told you you suck? And then Milroe was on to say, he told me a bunch of positions I could have switched to, but look at where I'm at now. Who gets the last laugh? That is a guy with a grudge. And credit to him for using that to kind of, it's the chip on his shoulder to motivate himself. I'm a fan of his. I think that he was not a good quarterback to start the season. He was just an athlete that happened to be back there. And he's made tremendous strides this season. As a passer, he was a guy that would just look to run. I don't think he looked to throw a ton. The play would break down around him. He'd kind of go into scramble mode. He's playing much more controlled football now. He has a big arm and he's athletic. I don't think he knew how to put the two together at the beginning of the season. Didn't know how, but like he was struggling to do it. And now he's doing it. So clearly there was a path there. And yeah, it's hard not to draw that parallel right to Malik Cunningham and wonder, all right, because it's similar skill set. Now Cunningham's more developed as a passer. So maybe it's not entirely the same, but maybe that's just how Bill O'Brien looks at these guys. And if that's the case, it informs us how they view these athletic quarterbacks. And there's a couple of athletic quarterbacks in the draft we'll talk about. And if you're talking about changing offense philosophy, you learn something about Bill O'Brien here. I don't think it's necessarily that Malik Cunningham would have had the same rate of improvement in the NFL with this supporting cast that Milroe has at Alabama, relatively speaking. I'm not one of these people who thinks a college team could beat an NFL team, but relative to the opponent, Alabama's supporting cast is much better than New England's. But it's definitely interesting that O'Brien felt that way. And he had said in the past that he felt as though he was one of the ones who went down to Louisville to work out Malik Cunningham as a wide receiver. So you're seeing a little bit of a pattern here, and it's certainly an interesting peek behind the curtain, I guess you could say.
Yep. And we don't need to rehash whether Malik Cunningham was going to be the next answer at quarterback and all that, right? We kind of no one expected that, but to see that how they viewed him and how O'Brien potentially views these guys is noteworthy. Especially if he's here next year as this offensive coordinator and they are picking a new quarterback in the draft. Do they, Jaden Daniels has that athletic profile. Now he's a lot better as a passer, but do they shy away from those guys? I know, Evan's first point talking about this at Gillette was O'Brien worked with Deshaun Watson in Houston, which was a mobile guy, but he was maybe in that Jaden Daniels mold is more of an advanced passer. So that might not be a flag in O'Brien's book because he has that ability in the pocket and as a passer, but it's just noteworthy hearing those comments.
So it's more about you didn't need, and I'm not saying guys don't need to improve from college to the NFL, but Deshaun Watson had all the pieces in place. He was a good quarterback, whereas you're talking about with a guy like Malik Cunningham, with a guy like Jalen Milroe, you're talking about a project. You're talking about a guy you got to put the time in, you got to put the work in. There's a real process to get those guys where they need to be, and it definitely feels like maybe O'Brien just didn't feel that doesn't feel that process is worth it. Doesn't feel like it's worth putting in the time with those guys, or maybe just that's not something he believes in, or he just doesn't know how. That's kind of what you see here. I don't think this informs us a ton about a guy like Jaden Daniels. I don't think it does, but it does tell us that if they are going to go for these, more like pure athlete quarterbacks, O'Brien doesn't see them as quarterbacks. He sees them as receivers or maybe another position.
Yep. So definitely interesting, especially if he's still in the mix here moving forward, which obviously will be the first big dominoes to fall in the offseason, that coaching staff. But we can transition that into this week's game against the Buffalo Bills, Alex's favorite team there. And we had a roster move this week, and Ramondre Stevenson was put on IR, as we all kind of expected that ankle injury was going to end his year. And they signed cornerback Marco Wilson, who was waived from the Cardinals. A lot of experience. I think he started north of 30 games throughout his career. He was a fourth-round pick.
Yeah.
At one point, infamously known for throwing the shoe in that Florida LSU game that kind of cost LSU the game Florida the game a few years ago. So we've been talking a lot about them needing, obviously they need cornerback depth this year with Christian Gonzalez out, Marcus Jones out, J.C. Jackson now gone. But that guy going forward to that third boundary quarterback, that cornerback that was supposed to be Jack Jones. So this is a guy who's played a good amount of football in this league. He was, again, a fourth-round pick, so an interesting prospect. So, worth the shot at this point to bring him in and kind of see what you have.
And I think it was really interesting because they claimed him off waivers. He's actually under contract through next year.
Yeah.
So they're going to need some sort of boundary corner depth. And he's a guy that's going to compete with, a guy like Isaiah Bolden, I think, for that role. He's been bad this year. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. PFF has him as the third lowest ranked corner. One of the guys behind him is actually J.C. Jackson. But
there you go.
Yeah, he hasn't been good. We'll see if he can give them something. They just needed a body out there, frankly. But I'm more interested in him maybe in 2024.
Yep. Still, like, what's he, 23, 24 years old? So still young, still under contract. You expect him to be in the mix next year in camp, kind of see how that looks. And he gets a head start here with these last two games. So I guess we'll start with the defense against Buffalo and Josh Allen. And they have a new offensive coordinator in Joe Brady. They've won 3 out of the last 4 games, even though they just squeaked by Easton Stick and GIF and the Chargers on Saturday night. I don't know. There was so much football last weekend. Saturday night, I believe it was. How are you looking at your Buffalo Bills this time of the year? Or do you see them as this team that no one wants to face in the playoffs, like a lot of people are talking about? Or are they still? I mean, they are very injured defensively, but how are you looking at Josh Allen and these Bills nowadays?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, look at this. They're playing better. What happened? They started running the ball more. They took the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. It's almost like he can't do everything. Who would have thought, right? Who would have thought that he was maybe a touch overrated? Well, what I think is going to be really interesting about this game is I think the Patriots can take away the run game. And I think they can do it without necessarily overcommitting to it because that's what they've done all year. So if they can limit James Cook, I think this is going to be the first time in a few weeks that Josh Allen actually has to go out there and win the game. He had some chances to do it earlier this season. He definitely, I think he probably played better than we initially gave him credit for in that first matchup. There were some drops in that Bills game that weren't great, but he could have been better as well. I think they had him seeing ghosts of time. It's going to be really interesting for me to see compared to that first matchup. Now, look, the addition of the run game and the switch from Ken Dorsey to Joe Brady changes enough as it is. But within that, just within the passing game element of it, do the Bills change things up, or do they go back and look at that first matchup and be like, the plays are there, we just didn't make them. Like, we're going to ride the same thing and hopefully just turn a couple things around. So it'll be really interesting to see after kind of getting punched in the mouth by the Patriots defense earlier this season, if the Bills respond by making massive changes or just continue to play their game.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of looking at. I went back and looked at that Week 7 game. They blitzed Josh Allen like almost 50% of the time on those passes. He only averaged 5.5 yards per attempt. They got a 41% pressure rate on him. So, like in the past few years, they've been sitting in coverage and kind of doing that like mush rush a little bit. But this time they really heated him up and they tried to go after him and make him make quick decisions. And it worked. They won the game. But as you said, there were drops. And now Joe Brady comes in here. They are running the ball a lot more. Part of that is with Josh Allen. He's running the ball a little bit more. James Cook, he's electric. He fumbles a lot, but he's an electric runner. Uses them well in the pass game too. So that will be the big question: is New England going to try to heat him up again? And how does Joe Brady, as a new offensive coordinator here, kind of respond? And do they change their game plan, or just say, hey, we had the plays and we didn't make them against you earlier in the year?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it. And some of it depends on how the run game gets going. Like if James Cook really gets going, they're not going to throw the ball ton in this game, I don't think. But I don't think the Patriots are going to go all out to stop the run. I don't. I still think Josh Allen is the priority first and foremost.
Yep.
But I think they can. But I think they can stop the run without having to allocate like excessive resources to it. Right.
Yeah. Because that defensive line and Christian Barmore has been so dominant all year. And then Stephon Diggs is the main guy you look at, even though he's been kind of quiet this year. And we mentioned the cornerback depth at the top. Jonathan Jones has been playing some good football, even though he's battling a knee injury. You'd assume he's the guy who's going to be seeing Stephon Diggs the most, just how this secondary is. But another thing with Joe Brady is Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, tongue twister. Those guys have started to get a little bit more production as well in that Bills offense. So you're back looking at Miles Bryant, Sean Wade, Alex Austin. Marco Wilson's probably not going to have a big role this week. So it could be some slim pickings back there against some Bills receivers who are playing better outside of Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, and it's a test. It's been all week. Last week, I thought they handled it pretty well against a relatively deep Broncos receiving group. Now, part of that was the pass rush. Part of that was Russ just not having a good game. So I don't know how much you can count on things like that. But guys have been stepping up. Miles Bryant played very well last week. I thought Alex Austin had some. It wasn't great, but he had some okay reps. Like he held his own at times. So they're getting an elevated level of play from those guys. The question is, does it continue?
Yep. That'll be the question mark with Josh Allen. So we can go to the Patriots quarterback, Bailey Zappi. Mac Jones won this game in week 7. He looked good, probably his best game of the year. What do you want to see from Zappi in this one?
Just more consistency. That's where we're at with him. Like he's definitely making some good plays, but there's too many misses in between them. And can he string not just a drive together, but a full game together? It's what we're still waiting on with him. Mac was able to do that against the Bills. We'll see if Zappi can have a similar result because his defense has not been good recently. It really hasn't. So this is a good chance for him. And, I think if he plays well in this game, I still think they need to go out and take quarterback early in the draft. But maybe Bill, I do think we're trending towards, and Bill was very, very complimentary of Bailey Zappi on the radio this week, specifically when it comes to lack of turnovers. I'm not ruling out if Bill comes back, him saying, hey, the quarterback's finally not turning the ball over. We're going to build elsewhere and keep this guy. And I think as long as Zappi can take all the sacks he wants, and he's going to take a bunch, if he doesn't turn the ball over, Bill's going to seriously consider him entering camp next year as the unquestioned starter. So I think you look with him to just not turn the ball over, or they look with him to just not turn the ball over. I want to see him actually like continuously make plays and not just be, a net, just not bad. I want to see him be good.
More than just like all your explosives. Like the explosives are good, obviously, but more than just these 50-50 balls to Jump Parker or to Devontae Parker. Right. And that was the thing. Again, going back to that week 7 game with Mac, he had a 4.3 average depth of target. He was getting the ball out like under 2.5 seconds. He was 13 of 16 for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns, throwing less, 10 yards less than the line of scrimmage. And that's the stuff Bailey Zappi hasn't been able to do when he's in structure, especially when, the opposition is blitzing, kind of heating him up. He hasn't been good in that short range. Now, their offenses look better because he's finding those explosives downfield and working the pocket. But if you want him to be this guy going forward, it's not only hitting those, but okay, now let's start hitting the things in structure and we can string some drives together instead of, what was it on Sunday, like 7 3-and-outs and three of
Right.
12 on third down or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And
19 points on offense.
you're still so hit and miss. If you can start hitting those layups in the easy ones and just, the short little passes to your tight ends or DeMario Douglas, letting them get some yak, like that's when this offense can kind of take the next step. And Mac had that success against Buffalo earlier in the year. So there might be some opportunities for Bailey in this one.
Right.
I mean, elsewhere, offensively, the offensive line has been, it's Trent Brown. He's been the guy
Right.
in the picture this week. He hasn't practiced all week. He was there for the media portion today, but then he was listed as a non-participant dealing with an illness. He looked checked out of the game Sunday night in Denver, playing at a different speed a lot. That was how Mike Reese worded it, playing at a different speed than his teammates. So I'm not sure if we'll see much of Trent Brown at all in this one, or if we're going to get that weird rotation with Vidarian Lowe, and then it's Lowe and Antonio Mafia at left guard, and Ed Oliver is sitting in there in the middle. So Trent Brown's the big one, but this could be another shaky performance from that offensive line.
Yeah, especially against this Bills pass rush, which is the one group that's still kind of going, and that's another spot where Zappy's going to be tested, how he handles pressure.
Yep. So did we talk about Trent a lot Sunday or after Sunday's game about his future?
Maybe. I don't remember. I talked about it on Catch 22 today. They need to move on. And I understand why they might, I'm not ruling out that he doesn't come back because he's a top tier tackle that you don't have to pay top tier money. And they love that guy. But it's so easy for them to go year to year with him right now and put up with the warts. It has to stop. It has to stop. They need to make, whether it's Tyron Smith, whether it's Joe Alt, they need to make an actual investment in the tackle position. And Trent Brown does not represent that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I still think there's a path for him to come back, but it just should be over at this point. It's not working. He can't buy in unless Dante Scarnecchia is his coach, and Dante Scarnecchia isn't here. I'd rather Connor McDermott or Vidarian Lowe, for as bad as Vidarian Lowe has been out, at least they're giving it their all, and they're playing their tails off at this point, not actively checking out mid plays and hurting your team. So draft a guy, please, hopefully, and with one of those first two picks, and we can just move on from him. But with that free agent market and how they have gone year to year with this, you just, unfortunately, you can't rule out a return at this point. But
right,
we'll kind of see how that looks if he's out there again, if he's rotated in on Sunday. But I know Juju didn't practice today. He's missed the last few games, so it might be without him. Hunter Henry has still been limited throughout the week, so you might still be down some of these pass catchers. Zeke had an illness. He didn't practice today. You hope he's good, or you're down to Kevin Harris and JaMychal Hasty at running back there. So still some slim pickings for Zappy, but anything else you're looking at offensively for
Zeke's been such a big part of what they do, and if they don't have him, I really the whole how many times has Zappy just been bailed out by Zeke Elliott on a check down? So lot. That's a guy that it could look a lot different for Bailey Zappe if Ezekiel Elliott's not out there.
Yep. So again, that's just an illness. You hope he's ready. That illness seems to be working its way through the locker room. So, but we'll see on that. Last but not least, special teams. Don't give up a kick return touchdown on the first play of the game, please. And then another one in the second half. Hopefully that game winner from Chad can kind of start a positive end to this year, and he makes all of his opportunities, and then you feel a lot better about him going into the offseason. But cover kicks, that's been the big thing, and Chad, hopefully he can make his kicks. Those are the two things I'll be watching on that special teams unit.
Yeah, I think with Chad Rowland, we talked about this on Tuesday. It's does that give him the confidence now moving forward where it's all right, he's going to start hitting his kicks. He's going to be the guy they thought they drafted. You go back and look at it. Steven Gostkowski did not have a good rookie year, and then obviously he was able to turn it around. So, does it boost his confidence? I think is what you're looking for.
Yeah. Vinatieri too. He missed 8 kicks his rookie year.
Yeah.
Not saying he's going to be Adam Vinatieri, but it's
the greatest kicker in NFL history. No big deal.
That's the history with some of these rookie kickers is they can be a little sporadic that rookie year. So again, you hope that might have been the turning point for him and ending with 2 strong games in Buffalo and New England. I'm not sure the weather for Sunday, but that would be a positive end to a rough rookie year for Chad there. But I mean, any last thoughts? That's pretty much it. Pats, Bills, they're still looking to play spoiler. They're looking to play spoiler, and I'm
Yeah,
sure they'd love to sweep Buffalo here. I know Kurt Warner mentioned it on the broadcast. He was talking to Jonathan Jones, and Jonathan Jones was saying, if we're going home, we're going to try to take all these teams home with us.
right.
And Buffalo is one of those teams fighting for their playoff lives in the division. I'm sure they'd love to sweep them and keep them out. So they're still going to be playing hard. They're obviously not tanking, as we've learned by now. But any last thoughts you had on this one in Buffalo on Sunday?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. So we can move on to some of the other things we had to discuss. But before we do that, let's quickly hear from our friends over at FanDuel.
Early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, so the NFL announced their 15 finalists for the Pro Football Hall of Fame for the 2024 class last night, and former Patriot Rodney Harrison is on the list. He should get in my opinion. I think he's kind of long overdue to get in, but I mean, there's 15 names, only 5 can get in. It's kind of an upward battle, but I think Rodney should absolutely be in the Hall of Fame and deservedly. Probably should have already been in the Hall of Fame, but nice to see he's a finalist again.
Yeah, he's long overdue. And the stat I always go to, and there's a bunch of reasons Rodney Harrison should be in. I mean, he's probably the greatest strong safety of his era. It's him or Brian Dawkins. Strong safety. Ed Reed is still Ed Reed. But the one stat I always go to is Rodney Harrison, 30 career sacks, and these are, I forget the exact numbers, but like 30 career sacks, 30 career interceptions, right? He was the first player in NFL history to do that. Only Ray Lewis has matched him since. First ballot Hall of Famer. And if we're keeping Rodney out because of the character clause, Ray Lewis. But Ray Lewis only met. Nobody else is close. The closest active player is Harrison Smith, who's at like, I think 25 and 15. Like he's not going to get there. He's not remotely close to getting there. In the age of these, very hybrid linebacker safeties, you think guys are getting those numbers. They're not. I think to set a precedent like that, you change the game. You change the game, you should absolutely be in. Plus, he's one of the greatest playoff performers in league history. Plus, he won multiple Super Bowls. Again, arguably the best strong safety for a 5-year span in the NFL. He's cited an anti-Patriots bias as to why he's not in. That may be part of it. I think the character clause, people maybe hold him being a dirty player against him, which again, Ray Lewis, first ballot Hall of Famer. Marvin Harrison got in over Terrell Owens, so we're just picking our spots here. 1 million. This is so long overdue for Rodney Harrison. He should get it. I'm not going to get my hopes up because the Pro Football Hall of Fame has been a mess for years now.
Yep.
But he 100%, he long overdue deserves to be in.
Yep. I agree with all those points. He absolutely should be in. It's just looking at those 15 names, unfortunately I just can't see it. I just don't see it. I don't know if you had like a 5 favorite who would be on your ballot in this one, but
the only ones who I think are locks are Gates and there's one other one. I got to pull the list up.
Jared Allen.
I don't think Jared Allen's a lock. He'll get in eventually, but I'm saying as like a first year on the ballot guy, I'd put Rodney. Rodney's more deserving at this point than he is because he's kind of a similar player to Rodney. Why should Rodney have to wait and he didn't? Is kind of the point. Dwight Freeney and Peppers. So Freeney, Peppers, and Gates to me are the locks.
Yeah.
There's other guys who should get in eventually. Jared Allen should get in. Excuse me. Willie Anderson should probably get in. Devin Hester, another guy that absolutely should be in, but they're not going to put him in. And we can talk about his candidacy because that's an interesting one as it relates to Matthew Slater. Andre Johnson should get in, but I'm not putting him in over Rodney. Reggie Wayne should be in. I'm not putting him in over Rodney. Willis and Woodson should be in. Woodson maybe over Rodney. Willis not. He should be in, but not before Rodney Harrison. The one other guy in this class to me that's really interesting is Torrey Holt. Do you know who led the NFL in both catches and receiving yards from 2000 to 2009 at a time when you had Harrison, Owens, Moss, Johnson, like all these great receivers that were in the league from 2000 to 2009? Not one of them had more catches nor more receiving yards than Torrey Holt. And the fact that Isaac Bruce is already in, his running mate from the greatest show on turf, and not that Isaac Bruce doesn't deserve to be in, I do not understand how Torrey Holt has slipped this far. I really don't. Again, no wide receiver was more productive for 10 years, which is pretty much the only time Torrey Holt was in the league. No wide receiver was more productive than Torrey Holt. I'm a big proponent that Torrey Holt should be in, but I still think that Rodney should get in first because he's just so worthy.
Yep. Long overdue. I agree with you, Holt. Devin Hester is the one that I've wanted to get in very badly the last, how long has he been on the ballot? However, the last 2-3 years.
And this is his second year.
Yeah. I wanted him to get in last year, and I think he deserves it. He's the greatest, kick returner of all time, but it's kind of like that Rodney thing. I just don't think they're going to, he's a special teams player. He's the greatest kick returner of all time, but he's a special teams player. I don't see them putting him in, unfortunately. He's absolutely Hall of Fame worthy in my eye. I'd love Devin Hester to get in, but with all those other names, I sadly don't see that.
So the thing about Hester, and this is a bigger issue with the Hall has always very much defined positions in their traditional roles. So as wide receivers are 6'4", play the X, are running down the field.
Yep.
Running backs you're talking about early down, do you have 1,000, how many 1,000-yard rushing seasons do you have, right? Things like that. Cornerbacks are looking, again, those big outside corners. They have not caught up, and you're starting to see this first generation of players, like specialized players, slot receivers, slot corners, return specialists, coverage specialists. The one guy here that was kind of ahead of the curve is Larry Centers. Larry Centers was the first ever back to have over 100 receptions in a season. He did about 10 years before anybody else would. He is still 7th all time in catches among non-wide receivers. And he didn't get in because he's not a traditional fullback. He's not a traditional running back. So I kind of think I think there are certain voters that look at Devin Hester and they say, what are you talking about? Because he's listed as wide receiver. Yeah. I think there's certain voters looking and say, what are you talking about? He was an average wide receiver at best. We returned kicks. Big deal. That's wrong. But Devin Hester is a guy that I think is going to inform the cases of a guy like Matthew Slater, of a guy like Julian Edelman, of a guy even like, some of these receiving backs that are going to come out, because they have not been kind to receiving backs because that's not their traditional position. So as like Matt Forte is a guy who's they've completely overlooked. I'm not saying Matt Forte should be in, but he never even gets the semifinalist round. And he was one of the best receiving backs of his era. He was the guy after Centers who had the 100-catch season. You really have to look. The Hall has to start considering these guys who play specialized positions because, no, Devin Hester is not one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. He is the greatest kick returner of all time, and kick returner is a position, whether the Hall wants to admit it or not. Matthew Slater is the greatest coverage specialist of all time. The Hall's not going to look at coverage specialist as a position. I think you do have to scale it by position. You can't expect a punter and kickers and punters. I mean, they've been out on kickers and punters for years and years and years. You cannot expect a kicker and punter to do what a quarterback does. That's just the reality of it. I think you have to do it by position. And to me, like, my bar for Hall of Fame was this player for an extended period of time, one of the elite players at their position. Were you a top 3 player at your position? And maybe for kicker or punter, you say, all right, it's a little different. But like, if a guy was the best kicker in the league for 5 years, for 10 years, he should be in. That it took Ray Guy as long as it took him to get in, to me, is criminal. The fact that is Gary Anderson, right, who's the leading scorer in NFL history, is not in, is criminal. Or I think he might have. Did he just get in?
He might have.
But like, you can't have a guy who's the leading scorer in the history of the league. If he did get in, I know, he's not in. He's not in. He was the best kicker in the league for, or a top 2 kicker in the league for about 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Like, you can't not have that guy in. I think you need to scale it for that. Part of it is they need to get rid of the flat 5 players every year. Some years there should be more. Some years there should be less. I hate that they do that. I actually don't hate that baseball some year has no Hall of Famers. Maybe there's nobody in the class that's really worthy. Now, the way they're getting to 0 by keeping out Barry Bonds and Pete Rose, that's another conversation. But the Hall has to start recognizing these guys who are specialists. And I don't just mean kickers and punters, but guys who play specialized positions. And Devin Hester, frankly, would be a fantastic way to start. And Hester not getting in is leading me to believe that Matthew Slater won't get in, because I think that they're similar cases.
Unfortunately. And he deserves it too, because again, they're positions in the game, and these guys are the best at those positions. And I mean, a guy like Devin Hester, like, a lot of people say, like, can you tell the story of football without them? Like, Devin Hester is up there, like all decades team twice in the 2000s and 2010s. He's has the most return touchdowns of all time. He had the one in the Super Bowl, right? Like, big moment, big plays. Like,
you had a team kicking the ball out of bounds in the Super Bowl, spotting a team. And granted, Rex Grossman was their quarterback, but spotting a team at the 40-yard line instead of kicking off to Devin Hester, that should tell you a lot.
And then the one time they accidentally kick it to him, he houses it for a touchdown. So, I agree. You got to put these guys in. Like, you look at the game now, Slater, a guy like Justin Tucker should absolutely be in, best kicker in the league the past how many years. Like, their positions in your game, and you should put the best players at those positions in. I get they're not quarterbacks and wide receivers. They don't put up these insane stats, but it should be important for those guys to get in. And the 5-player limit, I think, hurts them when you have guys like Dwight Freeney and Torrey Holt, who again are putting up those stats. So it's unfortunate that they probably won't get in, but they should absolutely get in at some point here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. With Rodney.
Yeah.
Rodney should be in there too. But that's our Hall of Fame talk. We can then transition this over to some college football talk. But before we do that, we can quickly hear from our other friends over at SeatGeek.
For the best deal on Celtics tickets, and with over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports festivals, and more. With the NFL, NBA, and NHL seasons in full swing, you don't want to miss out. SeatGeek has your tickets to every game. Plus, artists like Travis Scott are on tour. They put all the tickets across the web in one place to make sure you're getting a good deal. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so look for the green dots. Green means good and red means bad. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps. So as you know, I always come through for you guys. You can use my code DREAMERSPRO for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code DREAMERSPRO. Make sure you check the link in the description to download the app.
All right, so bowl season is in full swing. We had the wonderful Mayo Bowl yesterday.
That's awesome.
I was just looking at my phone, the Pop-Tart Bowls today. Did you see the Sickos Committee posted the giant toaster on the field?
Yeah, but they said they have an edible mascot. I still need to know what that's all about.
Really? That's interesting. But bowl season is awesome, all of these fun stuffs they do. But the two ones that we'll really be focused on is the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. On New Year's Day, we have Alabama against Michigan in the Rose Bowl and Texas against Washington in the Sugar Bowl, the college football playoffs. Should be two awesome games. Tons of potential draft prospects in this one, high picks, quarterbacks. We got it all. So, what's kind of at the top of your watch list for these two games?
So I got a list of players up on 985thesportshub.com if you want to check that out. And I went over some of them with Taylor Kyles last night. It's really a story of two different games because they're two very different matchups. Washington, Texas, it might score 100 points.
I hope.
That game is going to be an absolute shootout. I think you're looking at the skill position. Obviously you're looking at the quarterbacks, right? Michael Penix, we know is going to be in this draft, should be a first-round pick. He's trying to really seal himself as a first-round pick and as QB4 in this draft. It's a little more interesting with Quinn Ewers. He's probably going to go back to school if he's not a first. So what will happen sort of is his people after the playoffs done, whenever Texas is done, whether it's after the Sugar Bowl or whether it's after the college football playoff, they'll kind of poke around the NFL and they'll talk to their people and be like, all right, well, would you have a first round grade on him? If he feels like he's going to be a first round pick, I would think he'll come out. If not, he'll go back to school and will probably be a first round pick next year. So you're looking for him. What he should tear up Washington. You're really looking at, does he get a chance against an Alabama or Michigan defense, one of the best defenses in football? That's what you're looking at with the quarterbacks. These are two of the best skill position groups in the country, so that's going to be a ton of fun. On one side, you got Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan. You're talking about a top 15, maybe top 10 pick in Odunze and a couple other top 100 guys in McMillan and Polk. Polk's a guy I like for the Patriots. He reminds me a little bit of Jacoby Myers. And then obviously Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, and Jatavian Sanders, two wide receivers and a tight end for Texas that are all just freak athletes, unbelievable big play creators. Worthy I've compared to Zay Flowers to Zay Flowers. I think A.D. Mitchell has some like prime Devontae Parker in his game, and Jatavian Sanders, when the Athletic does that list every year of like the athletic freaks in the combine, right?
Yeah. He's up there.
Jatavian Sanders, 6'4", 250, super well-rounded tight end, great athlete. It's going to be fun to watch those groups go back and forth, especially because there's not a ton of defense on either side. I think Washington has a better defense. They got some guys in their front. Braylon Trice, one of their edge rushers, will probably be a first-round pick. I'm really interested to watch one of their starting corners, a guy named Jabbar Muhammad, Oklahoma State transfer, third year as a starter, first year at Washington. It's 5'10", but he's been playing competitive on the boundary. He had a couple of really good games the last few weeks. Reminds me kind of a Miles Bryant, honestly. He's a little bit bigger, and he's projected, even though he's played well, he's been really good in man. He's projected as like a late day 3 UDFA kind of guy. And he doesn't have top flight speed, and he doesn't have the size you want for a guy on the boundary. Patriots don't seem to care about either of those things. So, you bring him in, you try him on the boundary. At the very least, he becomes a Miles Bryant kind of nickel safety kind of guy. But he strikes me as a Patriot, certainly. So, but that game, I think you're looking at points, who has the ball last. And I'm going with Michael Penix, just having that intangible, that dog in him, that he's going to figure out a way late in that game to make one more play. And I have Texas advancing.
Yep. Texas or Washington?
Washington. I've Washington advancing. Yeah. Yep. I have my timeline up here, and there's literally a tweet about Texas just now about Tavondre Sweat, who, what a name for defensive tackle. That guy, I wish we could talk about him for the Patriots.
Touchdown pass catcher.
Yeah.
Heisman post. Those pass catchers, obviously Penix, we've talked a lot about, but I think those pass catchers, especially if you're talking about quarterback with that first pick, Drake May, Jane Daniels, Caleb Williams, a lot of those pass catchers seem to be in that 30 to 40 range with your early second round pick, and they're really talented. A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, the three on the two, Rome Odunze will be gone, but the two other ones on Washington you just named. So those are really guys to watch in my eyes. And Washington has a tackle too. Fatanu, is that?
Fatanu. Yeah. So I should have mentioned Troy Fatanu. 4-year start, 3 or 4 year starter, I believe. I forget off the top of my head. Left tackle prospect. He's going to go late first, early second round. So right in that range for the Patriots with their second pick, where there's a bunch of tackles, and we'll have to sort that group out. But yeah, the thing with him, like, super high floor, not necessarily a high ceiling, 6'4", 317, kind of maxed out physically, 24-year-old. So you're not getting much more from him, but he looks like a really good player right now. Super technically sound, clean football player. Yep.
And then the other game, Michigan, Alabama, I hope JJ McCarthy has to make plays in this game. That's what I
know.
want to watch, because we've said all year, it's, Michigan, they love to run the ball, obviously, and JJ McCarthy only has to do so much. There are some really good flashes. There are some real just other times. And against a good Alabama defense, you assume they're going to kind of load up and try to take away the run, which Michigan has two really good running backs too, we can talk about. But I hope this game comes down to, like, let's put the ball in JJ McCarthy's hands and go prove that you're a top 50 quarterback or a first round quarterback if he comes out. And if he has a good game, good college football playoffs, then you'd assume he is going to come out.
Yeah, another big prove it spot. And I obviously haven't been super high on McCarthy, just because I don't, whether you like him or you don't like him, I don't think you can feel strongly about him one way or the other. You're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
Because what have you seen? He threw 8 passes against Penn State. Right? He didn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage really against Ohio State or Iowa. So, and that, like, maybe he is good. I don't know. I really don't know, because he hasn't done anything. This would be a great chance, and I think Alabama's going to do that, because Michigan's got 2 fantastic running backs in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, who both scream early day 3 Patriots picks from Andre Stevenson replacements. Alabama's going to take those guys away, and they're going to put Kool-Aid McKinstry, and it sounds like he's healthy. They're going to put Kool-Aid McKinstry out there on the boundary against Roman Wilson, and they are going to force J.J. McCarthy to stand there, make reads, extend plays, go out and win this game. I think offensively, as dynamic as Jalen Milroe is, I think Alabama's going to play a very safe, controlled game. I think they're going to run the football quite a bit, and Milroe will be a part of that, but I think they're going to make Michigan beat them. They're not going to not turn the ball over. They're not going to give them extra opportunities. I think that it's a low-scoring game. I think it's a rock fight. But I think at the end of the day, I trust Jalen Milroe more to make a play than I trust J.J. McCarthy to make a play. I think Alabama puts J.J. McCarthy in a spot he hasn't been in all year. Give me Alabama in what is technically right now an upset in this one. Michigan 1.5-point favorites. Give me Alabama to put J.J. McCarthy in a blender. They're going to get a couple turnovers, and they win. This is probably, I'm going to like a 24-10 kind of game, like that sort of thing. And that may even be on the higher end of it.
Yeah, 2 real opposite games, but it would be interesting to watch McCarthy, the running backs. I like Roman Wilson kind of maybe as a later pick. He wouldn't be in that second round, third round range.
No, he's I mean, you can talk about him maybe in the 4th round.
Yeah,
I think
early day 3. We'll see how he plays in these games too.
Yeah, but he's an interesting player, because I think he's really good at the catch point, and he does some nice things after the catch. He needs to be better pre-catch. So like the release, the route running, all of that, like that's where he needs to be better. And obviously that's not something the Patriots have been great about coaching up. So, and I just pulled it up on FanDuel. Alabama is +1.5, and the number's 44.5 on that game. So it's probably about right. What I say, 24-10. It might be a little bit on the higher end. And just while I have it here, FanDuel has, where's the college football playoff? Here it is. FanDuel has college football playoff. Texas is 4.5-point favorites. They have the number at 62. Oh yeah, we're going over that. We might have that at halftime.
Hopefully we go over on that. But the Michigan offense will be worth watching. Bama side, like the only offensive guy is J.C. Latham, who is like a big physical right tackle. They have a lot of interesting guys on the defensive side of the ball with Dallas Turner, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Those guys should be early first-round picks. The safety, I'm blanking on his name, who took over for Brian Branch. He seems...
Yeah, Malachi Moore, textbook Patriots pick. I felt weird when I was putting the list together, because of all 4 teams, I had the fewest Bama guys of anybody.
Yeah.
But they're all their prospects. Like, I'm not putting Dallas Turner on there, right? Because we would think, right? And I still see a world in which they draft Dallas Turner, but that's, that's if Bill just totally has his way and there's no changes. No, the Bama guy, J.C. Latham reminds me a lot of, like, good Trent Brown, not the guy he's been the last few
weeks. He's a monster.
Trent Brown, but he's supposed to go like 10 to 15, so that's a weird range for the Patriots. Are you trading down or are you trading way up? I also forgot to mention, what's the name of the guy from Texas has a tackle too. He's like the day 3 version of J.C. Latham, and it'll be interesting to watch him because Washington has 2 very good edge rushers, so he'll be tested. Christian Jones from Texas.
Yep.
But yeah, with Alabama, you're talking about Malachi Moore. You're talking about Jermaine Burton interests me. Burner, great at the catch point, plays much bigger than he is. he could go anywhere from the 3rd round to like the 7th because interviews going to be big for him. He's a bit of a hothead. But yeah, not a ton of Alabama guys. With Michigan, I think there are 2 defensive players in Michigan that would make a ton of sense for the Patriots. They need to go out and get a true free safety. We've talked about that. Rod Moore is Michigan's starting free safety. He's been that for 3 years. He would make a ton of sense for them. And then Mike Sanderstill, who's Everett guy, Everett, Mass, converted wide receiver, plays everywhere in that Michigan secondary. Day 3 pick. He, as like kind of a jack of all trades, think of him as like a bigger, more athletic Miles Bryant. I think he could be that kind of guy. So he's a fun player.
Sounds like a Patriot. If Bill's here, sounds like a Patriot. But yeah, those 2 should be 2 awesome games. They are New Year's Day, which is Monday.
Yes.
So we will be back, of course, we're going to be Tuesday next week, and we will, talk about those games, I'm sure, and we will talk about Patriots versus Bills, Week 17, getting down to the end here. But again, we will be back on Tuesday next week, so make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications so you do know when we go live. In the meantime, you can follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Go over to 985thesportshub.com. You can read his list of those prospects we just talked about and his Patriots coverage. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at @IamBrianHines. Go to patspulpit.com for my Patriots coverage. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in, and we